The edge of despair, the night sky stretched endlessly above, filled with stars that burned like cold fires. From the highest tower of the alien city, the princess stood alone, her long cloak torn by the wind. Her people once called her their hope, their light, their voice. But now, she was nothing more than a shadow, forgotten and broken. Her world had betrayed her. The war had stolen her family. The council had turned against her. Lies had spread through the palace until even the servants avoided her eyes. She had fought to hold on, to lead with honor, but each day the weight grew heavier, crushing her spirit. Now she had no more strength to fight. Her feet carried her to the very edge of the platform, a wide balcony high above the dark city streets. Below, the lights of the alien capital flickered like dying embers. Above, the stars whispered promises of silence, of escape. She spread her arms and closed her eyes. The cold air stung her face. For the first time in many years, she felt something close to peace. If she stepped forward, there would be no more pain, no more shame, no more whispers in the council hall. "Perhaps the universe will forgive me," she whispered. Her voice trembled in the wind. "Perhaps it will be better if I am gone." Her toes touched the very edge. She leaned forward, and then she heard it. A voice not sharp like the council's, not cruel like her enemies, but warm, steady, and strong. "You are not alone." Her eyes flew open. She turned quickly, her heart pounding. Behind her stood a figure strange, tall, wearing no royal cloak, no alien armor. His clothes were simple. His face was worn, yet calm. His eyes were human, a human. The last thing she expected to see in this place, at this moment. "How did you?" she began, but her words broke off. The human did not move closer. He did not threaten. He simply stood there, his hands open, his voice gentle. "If you step forward," he said, "your pain will end, but so will your chance to rise again." She shook her head, anger mixing with sorrow. "Rise again. You do not know me. You do not know my pain." "I know what it is to carry pain," he answered. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. "I know what it feels like to want it gone. But death does not end pain, it only ends the chance to heal." She laughed bitterly. The sound was broken, hollow. "Heal? You speak like a dreamer. My world has turned against me. My people no longer want me. My family is gone. Tell me, human, how does one heal from that?" The human took a slow step forward, careful not to startle her. "Not alone," he said. "Never alone. Pain shared becomes lighter. Hope grows when it is spoken. And sometimes it only takes one voice to remind us." The princess's throat tightened. She wanted to dismiss him, to turn away. But his words, so simple, so strange, echoed in her heart. For years she had heard nothing but orders, accusations, and lies. Never kindness, never truth. She felt her feet tremble on the edge. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice cracked with tears she refused to let fall. "Why stop me? You are not of my people. You owe me nothing." The human's answer was simple, but it struck her like lightning. "Because you are alive, and that is reason enough." For a long moment, the world seemed to stand still. The wind fell quiet. The lights of the city dimmed. All that remained was the princess standing on the edge of despair, and the human whose words pulled her back. Her breath came fast, her chest heavy. Slowly, carefully, she stepped away from the ledge. Her knees felt weak, her heart unsteady, but her feet touched safe ground once more. The human did not smile, did not celebrate. He only nodded, as if this was not victory, but the beginning of something greater. The princess looked at him, her eyes filled with confusion and fragile hope. For the first time in years, she asked herself a question she thought was long dead. Could there still be a reason to live? The human met her gaze, his voice firm. There is always a reason. You only need to find it. And with those words, the silence of the night was no longer empty. It was filled with possibility. The broken princess the night wind carried silence after the human's words. But inside the princess's heart, there was no silence, only storms. She had stepped back from the edge, yet her pain had not vanished. The weight of her past still pressed on her chest like a mountain. She turned from him, her eyes fixed on the stars. You think a few words can erase years of betrayal? You think I can return to the world that has already judged me unworthy? The human did not answer right away. He stood calmly, watching her. His presence was strange, so out of place in the alien palace, yet steady, like a stone in a rushing river. Finally, he said, "No. Words alone cannot heal. But words can remind you that healing is still possible." The princess laughed bitterly. It was a cold laugh, empty and sharp. "My people see me as weak. My enemies see me as broken. Even my own blood. Gone, slaughtered in the war. Tell me, human, what is left for me? What remains when all that you are has been taken?" Her voice cracked on the last word, but she hid it quickly. Turning her face away, the human's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "What remains is you, still breathing, still standing, still alive. And life itself is a weapon if you learn to use it." The princess clenched her fists. His words angered her because they struck too close to truth. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong, to tell him he did not understand. Yet, a small part of her wondered, how could a simple human from a weaker species speak with such strength? She studied him quietly. His clothes were worn, his face scarred, his hands rough. He was no warrior of her people, no noble leader, no scholar of wisdom. He looked ordinary, fragile even. Yet his voice carried weight, as if he had stood on his own edge of despair once and refused to fall. Finally, she asked, "Why are you here? No human should be within these walls. Our worlds do not share peace." The human shrugged lightly. "Perhaps fate guided me. Perhaps I was only in the right place at the right time. But does that matter? What matters is this. I saw someone ready to fall. I could not walk away." The princess blinked. No alien had ever spoken to her like this. Her own kind had spoken to her with orders, with fear, with anger. But this human spoke with choice. He did not command, he did not beg. Simply stood there, offering his voice, and it unsettled her. Her mind pulled her back into memories she hated. She remembered the palace before it fell, the halls filled with light. Her family smiling, her people bowing with respect. She remembered her father's strong voice, her mother's gentle hand, her brother's laughter. She remembered the war that came, the fires that burned, the betrayal that broke her throne. She remembered the council standing over her. There, voices cold. "You are unfit. You are a burden. You are a reminder of failure." Each word had cut her deeper than any blade. Each whisper had built the wall around her heart. And when even her closest guards turned away, she had been left with nothing. That was why she came to the edge tonight. That was why she wanted it to end. And now, this stranger, this human dared to say her story was not finished. She turned sharply, her eyes fierce. "Do not pretend you understand me. You speak of pain, but you are human. My kind has lived for centuries. We have built empires, ruled stars. What do you know of losing everything?" For the first time, the human's expression hardened. He stepped closer, his eyes no longer soft but filled with a fire that startled her. I know, he said, his voice low, because I have lost too. The princess froze. She had not expected anger. She had not expected truth. The human's jaw tightened. I have seen my home burn alive. I have buried family with my own hands. I have stood where you stand now, on the edge, ready to fall. And do you know what stopped me? She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. What? He looked straight into her eyes. The choice to end pain or to fight through it. To die or to live. And I chose life. Because as long as I've breathed, there was still a chance to change the ending of my story. The words sank deep. The princess felt her chest tighten as if chains pulled against her heart. She wanted to deny him, to call him a liar, but she could see it in his eyes. Pain, the scars, the truth. He was not speaking like a dreamer. He was speaking like someone who had stood where she stood. Her voice trembled as she asked, "And if life only brings more pain, then endure it," he said. Because even pain means you are still alive. And as long as you are alive, hope is possible. Silence fell between them. The wind howled around the tower. The stars watched from above. The princess looked at him. At this strange human who carried no crown, no army, no power, only words. Yet those words had pulled her back from the edge. And now, those words fought against the walls inside her heart. She turned her gaze once more to the city below. The lights flickered, broken and dim, but still alive. Just like her, for the first time in years. She wondered if her story was not yet finished, but before she could speak, a sound broke the night. A distant clang of metal, the march of boots. Her sharp ears caught it first. Soldiers, her enemies. The ones who wanted her gone. Her blood ran cold. She looked to the human, who was already watching the shadows. His hand went to the small blade at his side. The princess's heart pounded. She thought of her people's betrayal, of her loneliness, of her pain. And now she wondered, was this human sent by fate, not just to give her words, but to fight by her side? Words of defiance, the sound of marching feet echoed faintly in the distance, a rhythm of steel and hate. But the princess's focus was not on the approaching soldiers. Her gaze burned into the human standing before her. This stranger who had stopped her from ending her life. She took a step closer, her voice sharp. "You think you can save me with words? You think a handful of sentences can erase the years of pain I have lived through?" The human did not flinch. He met her anger with calm eyes. "I do not wish to erase your pain. Pain cannot be erased, but it can be carried, and sometimes it can be shared." Her chest tightened. For a moment, she wanted to believe him. But then the bitterness inside her rose again. She laughed a cold, bitter sound. "Shared, do you not understand? My people despise me. My council cast me out. My family lies in the ground. Tell me, human, who is left to share this burden?" The human's eyes did not waver. "Me?" The word was simple. Almost too simple. Yet it struck her harder than any blade. She turned away quickly, unable to face him. Her hands gripped the stone railing of the balcony, her nails biting into the surface. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would a human care for an alien princess? You owe me nothing. Your people owe my kind nothing." He stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. "Because I see you, not a title, not a broken throne, not the lies of your council. I see a life on the edge, and no life deserves to be thrown away." Her body trembled. She hated that his words stirred something inside her, something she thought was long dead. The sound of boots grew louder now. The soldiers were near. Still, the human kept his attention on her, as if the danger in the shadows did not matter. The princess spun to face him again, her eyes fierce. "You are a fool. You speak of hope, but you do not understand. Hope is a weapon used against me. My people gave me hope once, then they tore it away. They promised loyalty, then they betrayed me. They promised a future, then they burned it to ash. Do not speak to me of hope, human. Hope is poison. The human listened, his face unreadable. When she finished, his voice was steady. No, false hope is poison. True hope is a flame. Even in darkness, it burns. Even when others betray, it remains. It does not come from them, it comes from you. Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream. But deep inside, the truth of his words unsettled her. The first flicker of torchlight appeared between the trees. Soldiers were coming closer. Still, the human did not move. He folded his arms, his eyes fixed on her. Tell me, princess, do you want to die because you truly wish for the end, or because you no longer believe in yourself? Her heart pounded. His question cut deeper than any sword. She had thought she wanted death to escape her pain. But was it truly escape? Or had she only lost faith in herself? She shook her head violently. Stop it. You cannot break me with your riddles. You do not know what it means to carry my blood, to carry my crown, and to watch it all shatter. The human's eyes blazed. For the first time, his calm turned to fire. His voice rose, echoing against the tower walls. And you do not know what it means to be human, to be fragile, weak, and yet still rise again. You think you are cursed because you lost everything? So did I. You think you are alone. So was I. But I chose to live, not because it was easy, but because surrender is the one true defeat. His words thundered in the night. The princess's breath caught in her throat. Never had anyone spoken to her like this. Not with pity, not with command, but with raw defiance. The torches were closer now. The soldiers' voices drifted through the air. Search the towers. She must not escape. The princess's body tensed, fear mixed with anger, and she turned her gaze back to the human. They come for me, they will kill me, and you will die too, if you stay. But the human only smiled faintly. Then let them come. She stared at him in disbelief. You are mad. You are outnumbered, outmatched. You cannot fight them all. His answer was quiet, but unshakable. Perhaps. But better to stand and fight with truth than to fall silently into the void. Something shifted inside her then. A spark. Small, faint, but real. Her people had abandoned her. Her counsel had betrayed her. But this stranger, this human chose to stay, even in the face of certain death. He had no reason, no gain. And yet he stood with her. The princess whispered, her voice breaking. Why? Why risk your life for me? He looked into her eyes. Because you are not just an alien princess. You are a soul that still breathes. And as long as you breathe, your story is not finished. Her heart trembled. She had no answer. The soldiers arrived at the base of the tower. Their footsteps shook the stairs as they climbed. The sound of steel clashed in the night. The human drew his small blade, the fire in his eyes unshaken. They will be here soon. Decide, princess. Will you step back into despair, or will you stand with me? Her hands shook. She felt the weight of her pain, the chains of her past. But she also felt the warmth of his words, the defiance in his voice. The flame of something she thought was gone choice. Her voice was soft, but it carried. I do not know if I can. The human's reply was firm. Then lean on me, till you can. And as the soldiers' shadows fell across the balcony, the princess took one step closer to him, not toward death, but toward the fight. Asterisk the silent enemy. The stairway shook with the sound of boots. Torches flickered on the stone walls. their light spilling upward like fire crawling toward the balcony. The princess stood frozen, her heart racing. Each step echoed like a countdown, each breath heavier than the last. The human did not tremble. He stood firm, his hand on the small blade at his side. His figure looked fragile against the storm of soldiers climbing closer, but his presence carried a weight the princess could not explain. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was calm, almost steady. Her pride flared. "I am no child to be protected," she whispered harshly. His eyes did not leave the stairway. "Then stand beside me. But do not give yourself to despair again. Not now." The words struck her like steel. She nodded once, her cloak brushing the stones as she moved closer to him. For the first time in many years, she was not alone. The first soldier burst onto the balcony. His armor gleamed with the mark of the usurpers, those who had stolen her throne. His eyes burned with hatred when they landed on the princess. "There she is," he shouted. "The traitor princess. Kill her." Blades rang out as more soldiers poured onto the balcony. The firelight painted their faces in shadows, their weapons flashing in the night. The princess's body tensed. She had no weapon, no strength left to fight. Her knees nearly buckled, but the human stepped forward. His blade was small, almost laughable against the soldiers' spears and swords. Yet he moved with sharp precision. When the first soldier lunged, the human sidestepped, his blade striking cleanly across the enemy's exposed neck. Blood sprayed, and the man crumpled. The princess gasped. She had not expected such speed, such defiance. The second soldier charged, swinging his heavy sword. The human ducked low, rolling across the stones, his blade slicing deep into the attacker's thigh. The man roared in pain and fell, but there were more, always more. The balcony filled with steel and hate. The princess backed against the wall, her heart slamming in her chest. She wanted to scream at him to run, to escape, but the humans' movements silenced her. Each strike he made was not wild, not desperate, but deliberate. He fought as one who had faced death before and chosen to defy it. Still, the numbers pressed hard. A spear cut across his arm, drawing blood. He staggered, but did not fall. Another sword slashed near his chest, tearing his shirt, leaving a shallow, weld wound. The princess's breath caught. She had never seen such courage, not from her council, not from her guards, not from anyone. This human, a stranger, fought against impossible odds with nothing but a small blade and unshakable will. Her voice trembled. "Why do you fight? You will die for me." The human's reply came between strikes, his voice sharp as steel. "Because your life matters more than my fear." Her knees weakened at the words. A heat burned in her chestnut. Fear, not sorrow, but something she thought long dead. Hope. The soldiers sneered. One shouted, "Pathetic human. You think you can stand against us." The human's eyes narrowed. His blade gleamed red in the torchlight. "I do not need to stand against all of you. I only need to stand long enough." The princess frowned, confused. "Long enough for what?" she whispered. The human gave no answer. But then she heard it, the sound. A faint hum, low and dangerous, rising from below. At first, she thought it was the soldiers' weapons. But as the sound grew louder, she realized it came from the darkness beyond the city. The soldiers paused, their faces turning pale. Some shifted nervously, glancing toward the horizon. "What is that?" Ole muttered. The princess felt her skin crawl. It was no sound of her people's machines. It was deeper, older, unnatural. The human's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the horizon, then back to the soldiers. "Your enemy is not me, not her, but you are too blind to see it." The soldiers snarled and pressed forward again, blades raised. But their movements were less sure now, their eyes flicking nervously toward the sound that grew louder and closer. The princess felt dread rise in her bones. Something was coming. Something more dangerous than these soldiers, more dangerous than the betrayal of her people. And somehow the human knew. He nodded once. His blade dripped with blood, his body broken but unbent. Yes, that is why I am here. Not only to stop you from falling, but to prepare you for what is coming. The soldiers fled, their courage shattered. The balcony lay in silence except for the hum of the approaching ships. The princess's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow this time, but of fear and realization. The human had been right. Her story was not finished. But the next chapter would not be about despair. It would be about survival. And as the silent enemy descended upon her world, the princess understood the truth. Her choice tonight was not only about her life. It was about the fate of everyone she had once thought lost. Asterisk, the humans stand the ships came down like dark mountains with fire in their bellies. The air shook. The balcony trembled. The city below flickered and went dim, as if the lights were afraid to shine. The princess stood beside the human, her breath unsteady. The soldiers who had hunted her now ran like frightened children. Their torches fell and rolled on the stone. Their armor clattered as they fled down the stairs. None of them looked back. The human did not chase them. He did not speak. He watched the sky with steady eyes, like a man counting the beats before a storm breaks. "Stay close to me," he said at last. The princess nodded. Her pride did not answer. Only her heart did. A deep tone rolled across the city, low and cold. It was not music. It was a command, an alien order. Buildings answered with a soft hum as strange waves washed over stone and glass. The princess felt the sound in her bones. Her fingers trembled. Dot from the first ship. A wide door opened. A ramp slid out like a metal tongue. Tall shapes stepped onto it, thin, jointed, almost elegant, but wrong. Their faces were masks of smooth metal. Their eyes were pale lights that did not blink. Each carried a weapon shaped like a rib of black glass. They did not walk fast. They did not need to. The city belonged to them the moment they arrived. The human drew in a long breath. "They test first," he said quietly. "Then they take." "How? Do you know?" the princess whispered. "Because they have done this before," he replied. "Not to your world. To others." A narrow beam of light swept across the tower. When it touched the stone smoked. When it touched a fallen spear, the spear cracked and turned to dust. When it brushed the balcony rail, the rail melted and dripped like wax. The human pulled her back. "Do not let that light touch you," she swallowed. "Can we fight them?" "Yes," he said. Then he added, "But not as the soldiers fight, not with rage. With patience, with aim." He looked around the balcony quickly. His eyes measured distance, cover, angles. He pointed to a heavy statue at the edgy carved guardian of old rulers. Its base was cracked from age. "Help me," he said. Together they pushed. The stone groaned. The statue tilted. The first group of aliens reached the base of the tower. Their pale eyes turned upward, weapons rising. The statue fell. It crashed. Down the stair shaft, smashing through the first flight, then the second, then the third. Dust exploded upward. Metal shrieked. The balcony shook again. The human did not watch it land. He grabbed the princess's wrist and pulled her through the doorway into the tower. "Move," he said. "They will come from below and from the air. We must break their line of sight." They ran through a long hall lined with empty banners. Windows showed the city streets turning red with strange fire. Crowds scattering, alarms that were not theirs crying from the sky. In the distance, 3 more ships opened like iron flowers. The princess forced her legs to keep up. "Where are we going?" "To the old signal room," he said. "High ground, thick walls, 1 door. We can hold there." "How do you know this place?" He gave a half smile that held no joy. "I learn fast when my life depends on it." They climbed narrow stairs, spiraling around a stone core. On the 3rd landing, the tower shook again. Dust fell in a fine rain. The princess coughed. The human wiped grit from his eyes and kept moving. Halfway up, a soft hiss slid through the air. The princess turned and froze. A thin needle of light was creeping up the stairwell toward them like a slow blade. The human shoved her through a side arch and slammed the door. The light kissed the wood. The door blackened and sank inward, but it held for a heartbeat longer than she expected. "Back," he said. They rushed down a short hall into a storage room. Clay jars, old tools, coils of wire. The human scanned the shelves, grabbed a length of wire and a small ceramic bowl, then cut a strip of cloth from his torn shirt. "What are you doing?" she asked, making a surprise. He wrapped the wire around the bowl, stuffed the cloth into the center, and soaked it with oil from a cracked jar. From his belt pouch, he pulled a tiny metal bead. He pressed it into the oil-soaked cloth and twisted the wire tight to trap it. "What is that bead?" she asked. "Something I hoped I would not need," he said. "Back up." He flung the device onto the floor by the door, then yanked her behind a stack of stone tiles. The door finally gave. A sheet of silent light cut the room in 2. 3 tall shadows stepped through the smoke-smooth faces, pale eyes, weapons like black ribs. The bead heated. The oil flashed. The bowl erupted not in fire, but in a burst of concussive air that slammed the aliens backward. Their weapons skittered, their masks cracked. The light in their eyes fluttered like dying stars. "Now," the human said. He moved fast. It was only a man with a small blade, but he aimed for joints, for wires, for seams. The first alien fell with a hiss as its neckline split. The second reached for its weapon. The princess snatched a broken tile and drove it down on its hand. The alien's fingers bent wrong. The human slipped under its reach and cut a cable at its side. It collapsed. The third raised its weapon and fired. The beam grazed the human's shoulder. He staggered, teeth bared in silent pain. Then drove his blade up beneath the alien's mask and severed something that sparked. Silence returned. Shaking, the princess stared at the fallen shapes. They did not bleed. They leaked thin smoke and a smell like burned rain. "You said they were worse than us," she whispered. "Now I believe you." "They are worse because they do not hate," he said. "They do not love, they only collect." He picked up one of the black rib weapons, tested its weight, and shook his head. "Locked to their mine net, won't fire for us." He tossed it aside and tore strips from a banner to bind his shoulder. The wound was charred, not cut. She reached toward it, then stopped. He nodded once. "Do it." Her hands were steady. For the first time that night, she tied the cloth tight. He hissed, then breathed out slow. "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank me," she answered. "You are bleeding because of me." "I am bleeding because I stood where I chose to stand." A second deep tone rolled across the city. This one was higher, colder. The human looked up. "Reinforcements. We must go." They climbed again, higher into the tower's core. Twice they had to duck into alcoves as pale beams swept across the stairs, hunting. Twice the human threw small metal beads that flashed bright enough to blind the alien eyes for 2 breaths, just enough to slip. Past at last, they reached a heavy door marked with old runes. The princess pressed her palm to the seal. It did not open. She swallowed. This room needs 2 royal marks. Mine, and her voice broke. My mother's. The human stepped beside her and studied the lock. He traced the rune ring with a fingertip, then tapped the stone 3 times. Your people built this with pride, he said softly. Pride writes patterns. He pointed to 2 runes that were worn smoother than the others. Again, he said, press here and here. Together, then the center. She did. The old mechanism shuddered. Dust fell. With a slow groan, the door slid open. Inside, the signal room waited like a sleeping heart. Thick walls, narrow windows, a single console of dark stone and metal. A tall mast rose through the ceiling. The air smelled of old oil and colder years. The human crossed to the console and brushed dust away. If the emitters still work, we can pulse jam their scouts around the tower and give the streets time to clear. You can do that? He glanced up with a small, tired smile. I can try. He set to work, fingers moving with quiet focus. The princess stood watch at the door, listening to the city cry. Screams faded. New ones began. Twice, she thought. She saw shapes gliding past the narrow window's smooth heads. Pale eyes, but they did not turn. Tell me, she said, without looking back. Why did you come here? Truly. The clack and scrape of his work slowed. Because there was a name and a message, he said at last. Your name. A whisper across an old relay. A request for help that no one answered. She turned. I did not send it. I know, he said. Someone did. Someone who remembered what you were before they broke you. He paused. Thought I was late. On the balcony, I thought I was too late. She felt heat rise behind her eyes. She blinked it away. You were not. The console hummed. A low wave rolled up the mast, then out into the air. Somewhere below, a scout's. Pale gaze flickered and went dark. Another beam swept wide and missed the tower by a hand's width. It works, he said. Not for long, but long enough to do what? To move. They secured the door with a fallen beam and a length of chain. The human scanned the room, collected 2 short iron rods, and slid one toward her. I cannot fire your weapons, he said, but I can make noise. If they breach, strike the joints first. Then the eyes. Their eyes are lights. Lights can go out.